Hello, my name is Girtman, and today we're going to be talking about globalization. So, what is globalization? Well, globalization, defined by globalization partners, refers to interconnectedness among countries through various relationships, from business, geographics, and technology to travel, to even culture and media. So, are you still a little confused on what globalization is? Well, globalization occurs in our everyday lives, believe it or not, especially when it comes to business. Aspects include increasing compensation, more diverse companies introduced in the marketing field, sharing technological advancements with one another, and producing a more diversity of ethnic groups in the workplace. But what do we really care about though, other than of course having more ethnic people within our workplace? Better products at a lower price, of course. Not to mention the spread of knowledge and technology such as Dell and Microsoft. Any of you out there like the game like me? Well, globalization is good in the fact that, let's take Microsoft for example. They have Xbox One, Xbox 360s, and previous game consoles. Sony has PlayStation, PS2, PS3, so on and so forth. So when you have globalization thrown in the mix, both of them are like, which one is better at a better price for me? Which one has more games available for me, readily available at a cheaper price? Well, if one consumer market field goes to Sony, you have a separate consumer field going to Microsoft, both of them being together like, Microsoft has cheaper games and maybe more of a higher price system. So Sony then thinks, well, how about we lower the price for our console and maybe raise the price up for the games so then it don't seem so bad since we have a cheaper console. So that's an example right there for us in the gaming world, how we view globalization as a bad thing or a good thing. And of course, now we have to talk about the bad stuff. Because with everything that you have good, there's always got to be a bad. That's just the way it works. Cheap foreign sweatshop laborers to make cheaper American goods. This weekend, actually, I went to Spirit Town with my brother and my mother. And I got these blind bag keychains. Got a really cool Jaws one from Hocus Pocus, and the Wolfman from the classic Universal Monster movie series. Now, how much do you think these cost to make? 10, 15, 20, 30, maybe more? No. These, all total, 3 of these, cost about like 20 to 25 bucks. Now, do you think it cost that much to make? No. Actually, probably cost half of that price. But of course, with globalization, they have it at a cheaper price. But then those who make these products, such as these keychains, or even like this rubber Spider-Man figure that I have, it didn't cost that much per production value. Which leads into my next bad thing, loss in job opportunities as company move their production towards facilities overseas. So let's say that the company who makes these blind bag figures, or even like the rubber Spider-Man figure I showed you, were to move overseas towards China or Japan. Well, those in the US who would make those products would lose their jobs because they either have to move overseas to China where the warehouse facility is at where they produce these, or they're just out of the job. The next part I like to talk about is the PowerPoint presentation article about globalization. With globalization, we often see the good more than we like to acknowledge the bad. Many items you own right now in your very own house were not even made in the United States. In fact, many of these household items were fairly cheap to make, with the help of laborers being paid very little. Some companies are winners in the world of globalization. For example, China. The place where your mom and dad would always say, eat your food, there are starving kids in China who would love to eat that. Well, China has become increasingly wealthy and powerful by supplying services across the globe. So, if I refer back to these keychains and rubber Spider-Man figure I showed you moments ago, do you think these were made in the US? Sure, you may say, well, you had to buy them in the US. I live in the state of Illinois, so they must be made somewhere in the state of Illinois. Well, like most products in your house, if you flip it on the underside or the backside, it says here, all rights reserved to the company who produced and made Jaws, Universal City. But, of course, if you look at the very last row, it says made in China. What does it say on the back of him? All copyrights reserved to Disney. Makes sense. Hocus Pocus is a Disney franchise film. But on the back of it, China, and even our web slinger here says China on the bottom of his foot. Another example, iPhone. iPhones, or most people probably don't even know what this is. iPod, where we used to play music before we had the luxury of listening to music on our phones. All made in Japan or China. Someone who spent hours and labors trying to make those products just for us to have and enjoy, to only them to having paid very little money, and then the big corporations making big bucks. And lastly, I like to touch up on is the PowerPoint portion of globalization. One that I found very interesting was the effects of tourism in the future. On this part of the article, it talked about how more people traveling more often will affect globalization. One fact, very first fact, says tourist numbers are expected to continue to increase by 2030. The number of international travelers will reach 1.8 billion per year if current trends continue. Which, of course, makes sense if you think about just how it affects the consumer market for globalization. Same thing with increased awareness of environmental issues. The more that we travel to these places that we love to visit, such as my favorite place I went to on vacation with my family was New York City, over time it will affect places just like New York City. We go in there, we go into the environment, we buy things, and over time the market fluctuates because they have to worry about having enough products made for travelers like me who live outside New York City to be able to buy these products and bring back home to them. And then the prices range from restaurants to fast food chains, such as places in New York City, because me and some other people who don't live outside of even the United States want to come visit. So it not only affects New York, but then other states surrounding New York City, and so on and so forth. And of course, travelers want real experiences. The article here mentions there has been a significant growth in the number of people who are looking for authentic places and experiences rather than artificial ones that have been created specifically for tourists. It includes the adrenaline junkies who extreme experiences such as mountaineer, whitewater rafting, rock climbing, so on and so forth. Lastly, it talks about other trends. In addition to these trends described above, many others have been observed. Trips are becoming shorter, but tourists are spending more, which of course makes sense, right? As I mentioned earlier, you go to your favorite place, what do you want to do? I want to go to the gift shop. I want to buy something that says New York City, or something that was from Universal Studios, Florida. So the more people, tourists who go there, the prices and fluctuate on food prices there and merchandising, which then affects the people who live or who are native to that area. Growth in the number of tourists from Asia is larger than any other region. There is a surge in niche tourism, small numbers of people traveling for unusual reasons. This includes medical tourism, when people travel to another country for surgery, and even medical procedures. And it states how already worth up to $60 million per year, medical tourism is growing at 20% a year. And that's something I didn't even know about, which I found fascinating, is that how tourism, such as me visiting my favorite places such as New York or even Universal Studios, would affect the economy for the favorite places I would go to. Even though I don't live there, I'm only there for about a week or two, and then I leave and I come back to my state, don't think anything about it. But the more per year tourism go there, people buy merchandise, they go buy food, they go to their favorite restaurants. Everything changes because a lot of these companies who give the product to these restaurants and to these, toy companies and knick-knack places say, well, there's a lot of tourists per year, and they look at demographics of percentages, how many people come, and the demographics and percentages of where these people live at. So then the prices got to go up for the people who live there because they have to make sure they make big bang bucks off the people who are coming to visit. So those are a few things I didn't know about globalization and some of the things I found interesting. So next time you play that favorite video game of yours, or listen to that favorite jam you've been liking to listen to, or even buy some of your favorite movie licensed products, just think that even though we get to enjoy these things, there's a lot more negative consequences than we actually realize. Thank you so much again for listening to my presentation, and I hope you have a wonderful evening, afternoon, or night.